The coach has many responsibilities during a session. The first is professional conduct. You must show appropriate and correct behaviour from the start, as this will affect athlete behaviour, the way they conduct themselves in the future. You must also be able to get points across in a clear and understandable manner, which allows you to show your knowledge and experience, which means that athlete can learn from your knowledge and experience and improve their game. Showing appropriate behaviour also includes good sportsmanship and respect to officials in games, dressing appropriately, as this can set the tone for the session and people will follow this example. You also need appropriate qualifications to coach your chosen sport. For example, in football you need maybe your FA Level 1 or FA Level 2. A coach must also treat the group equally and promote fair play, honesty and reward effort. Appropriate behaviour is important in all sports, but particularly team sports, as you have the power to influence a large number of people with just your actions. In individual sports, you're more likely to be able to tell them rationally, whereas a large group, they're likely to copy what you demonstrate. Like in individual sports, you can talk to them and say how you should behave, whereas to convey a message to a large number of people, then they're likely to just copy you. Furthermore, the younger the group or individual are, the more influence they're likely to be. So if they're a much younger group, then it's even more important to set a good example with what you wear and how you conduct yourself. And finally, the nature of the sport can affect professional conduct. For example, in football, it's within its culture to be maybe more abusive towards referees than it is in rugby. So it's even more important in football that you try to set a good example so people will copy you and not to be abusive to the refs. Secondly is health and safety. The coach is responsible for the health and well-being of all people in their session. As soon as coaches arrive, they must check the pitch or area for hazards in order to reduce risk of injury. Coaches need appropriate measures in place as they are responsible and need to fill out risk assessments. There are always risks and some can't be prevented or avoided, as there are always accidents and risks in every sport. However, it is a coach's role to minimise these risks and to judge whether certain activities can take place or if the risk is just too great. As a coach, you need to be aware of all different factors that may cause injury and take this into account within your sessions. Team sports tend to involve a lot more risk as there is more going on and you can't always be watching everyone. Whereas individual sports, you can keep an eye on that one individual and they judge whether something is dangerous or not and use judgment in that moment, whereas a team, you would have to plan it more. You can stop something immediately if it's just the individual. As I say, you're always watching them. The age of the group can also be a factor. Both very young and very old both pose more risks, although the risks are very different. Extremes of people are likely to have more risks involved. Furthermore, more experienced players are likely to know the risks of the given sport and how to prevent them, whereas more inexperienced players won't know how to do this. And finally, older players will be more aware and more likely to be more cautious, whereas children don't have this awareness or ability. Finally, child protection and legal obligations. This covers insurance and child protection. For example, child protection means not letting children leave until you know they're with their parent or guardian. You must also have up-to-date first aid training and CRB checks. This is obviously only appropriate for children and is much easier to control for individual sports. In a group, the task becomes much greater as there's much more risk to take into account and there's more children to look after. And you've got to be aware, you've got to be able to protect all the children in your group. Obviously, in an individual sport, you're only looking after that one parent and one child. You're you'll be able to talk to their parents regularly or their guardian regularly to keep updated and make sure they're alright, whereas it's much harder to be in contact with all the parents of a large group. This also includes transport. You need appropriate licence to drive a minibus, and it's inappropriate to allow them to make their own way there, and also illegal, especially if you're a teacher. If it's outside of school, getting lifts with parents, you have to make sure that that's safe and appropriate. And finally, just to compare and contrast different roles and different responsibilities and skills, your role as a friend as a coach and your role as a trainer are similar, as they both involve encouraging and complimenting the athlete in order to get the most out of them. However, they are different in that a friend may have more of an emotional connection and the feedback may be more rational. An innovator is also similar in this way, as the thought process is more rational, whereas a trainer is more manic in getting an athlete to do something in the heat of the moment or in that moment. All the other roles have time to reflect, whereas a trainer has more of a time constraint, as it's about pushing an athlete to their physical limit in order to get the most out of them at that point. Whereas maybe a friend or an innovator is able to plan and reflect. Role models are a powerful figure in sport and can have lots of influence on athletes. They're likely to copy their coach and people they see in the media. However, if that sport is not televised, this can have an impact, as the athletes have no major role model and may cause them to lose interest or choose not to learn that sport. A role model can also have a negative influence if participants decide to copy negative behaviour.